So this sum, instead of 16,000, the average median income in the United States is 41,000. So would you do it for $41,000? Absolutely
no.
not.
Fuck no.
It's a Monday edition here on Zero Blog 30, and today we have 4 rounds in the magazine. Round number 1. A Nebraska man lied about his qualification and convinced the company to let him do an active shooter drill without telling their employees. Needless to say, all hell broke loose when he ran into the building, firing blanks at unsuspecting workers, and now he's facing, wait for it, terrorism charges. He's just getting some terrorism charges.
The
Not
wheels
great.
really fell off of that one.
Yeah, that's going to damper the spirits at the old Monday water cooler, I would say. Round number 2, Colin O'Brady has 10 world records to his name. One of those is being the first person to solo trek across all of Antarctica. If you haven't heard about Antarctica, it's the 7th continent and it's cold as fuck. He joins the show to talk about his feats and his challenges to the listener. And people all across the globe are signing up for this challenge. I was in the moment. I accepted the challenge. We'll have to see if I'm an integrity violator, because I got a feeling I'm going to be an integrity violator about this challenge.
To walk across the globe?
No, not the globe. Good Lord, no, Kate. Listen to the interview in round number 2. Round 3, because Colin has such a rare accomplishment, we found other top adventure stories, and we're going to see if it's more impressive or less impressive than what Colin did. Spoiler alert, most of them are going to be less impressive. Round number 4, finally, Vladimir Putin offers Russian mothers $16,000 bonus if they have a certain number of children. Kate, for 16 grand, do you think having one little child that you don't want, do you think that's worth it?
No, not even close.
16 grand. When you find out the number of children that they're going to have and how long you're going to have to wait in order to cash in on this 16 grand, there is no shot. I don't think there's any American that would do it. In fact,
well, what's the conversion really? Like 16 grand in Russia? How much is that in the US?
It's a lot. I have that information too. And
okay,
so we'll figure that out. But still, the amount of time that you're going to have to wait is crazy. And all that today is going to be brought to you by our good friends at Whistle Pig. Whistle Pig is the best whiskey in the business. So many of my buddies have been like, I tried it since you talked about it, since it's on the podcast, and we absolutely love it. I got a new shipment in. They sent me up. I was running out of syrup. Cardi fucking loves the syrup. My kid, by the way, a hack for dads or moms too on weekends, Kate, because I know has Cash entered in his pancake phase yet?
No, not yet.
Oh,
we're dabbling in waffles.
Phase. Waffles?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about you, Nick? Is Gia and her?
Oh yeah, full blown pancakes. Orders it herself at the diner. Ready to roll.
All right. Now let me give you this advice. Cracker Barrel, not part of the ad. Cracker Barrel has these breakfast like feasts that they'll do. They'll send you like 20 different pancakes that are good quality pancakes, eggs, bacon, biscuits, the whole 9 yards for like $55. So we've been getting that, and you'll eat breakfast on it like a family of 4. We eat it for like 3 days, 4 days, and we'll have it. Put some of that syrup on it, the Whistle Pig syrup with the little bourbon. Cardi tried it out. I didn't tell them, because if I told them, they would never have tried it. And so I put it on their plate, the little bit of bourbon syrup, and they go, this tastes like fancy syrup. Like, this is the fanciest Cracker Barrel pancakes that we've ever had. Absolutely right. You have to order it. Go to whistlepig.com to order your own syrup. Or if you don't want syrup and you actually want whiskey, go get that from your local store, or just order it online as well. It's Whistle
Or make
Pig.
a drink with both. Pour a little of that syrup
Yeah,
in your bourbon,
have a little cocktail
thing.
And they have a cocktail list on their website and on their Instagram. They'll show you how to make it. If you go across the little bottom where they have like stories and things, there's different cocktails that they could try. I was going through, because sometimes you get tired of the same old shit. And there's also this website that if you have like different ingredients, you can pick the different ingredients that you have that make drinks, and it'll tell you what's the best one to do is. Try it with Whistle Pig, see what you got, and let us know. All right, let's get going with the actual show of today. This first story, Kate. I could see it happen. Have you guys seen that? Like, even at my church, whenever a mass shooting happens, a large mass shooting in the United States, my church will go over, which is that's a fucked up thing to say, right? Like, they happen so often that you have to have these conversations. They really asked a lot of the military veterans in the congregation, and I'm sure this happens at a lot of church, what do you guys think we should do? Like, every single military veteran is some kind of like hard softening expert. Like, we're just not an expert in that. Like, unless you actually did that. Shout out Kate with having physical security. She actually did do some of that. But they
you got to get a lot of serpentines going. Is what you need. High curbs and serpentines will stop that for sure.
Need some serpentines
right before a couple HESCO barriers.
Yeah, just fill them up with some sand. Give me 8 Marines right now at church to fill up some sandbags. Nobody's going in. You don't go eat chow until you give me 5 sandbags that are filled. Did you guys have to do that?
Right.
Did you ever have to
fill
do that?
Sandbags?
No, like at certain spots in Fallujah, because mortar rounds were coming in all the time. Before you went to chow, you had to fill 5 sandbags every time for like a month.
I do remember that at Balad. I do
fucking ridiculous.
That.
It sucked.
Yeah.
Well, because you have all these different mass shootings going on, of course the grifters are going to come out and try to figure out a way to grift on that. One of those ways happened in Nebraska. Kate, walk us through what happened.
Yes. So a man hired last spring to carry out what appeared to be an active shooting at an Omaha charity, complete with actors smeared with fake blood, has been criminally charged with terrorism counts. Things have gone awry, folks. That's Channels,
classic case of good initiative, bad judgment.
Bad judgment.
Terrible
John Channels
judgment.
of Omaha was arrested and charged on Tuesday with 5 counts of making terroristic threats and 1 weapons count. The incident happened May 19th when Channels, age 27, showed up at the Omaha Catholic Charities firing blanks from a semi-automatic handgun, and staging victims appeared to have been wounded or killed, according to police.
Can I say who I am picturing as the character in this story while you go through it? Brick Tomlin. Like that. Brick almost killed a guy. Like that's who this is.
You might want to lay low for a little while.
Yeah. Where did you get that pitchfork?
The charity hired him to test its workers' preparedness for such an attack. The incident caused panic amongst the charity's employees because no shit, and they had not been informed it was a drill.
Yeah, that's step 1, folks. If you're setting up this kind of thing and you're in HR, if there's going to be fake blood smeared or blood in any way, I feel like you got to tell the employees. You got to.
Yeah, even simple things like when I worked in like real high-rise buildings in Manhattan and there was going to be a fire drill or some sort of drill, they give you the heads up. They send you the email. Hey, just the siren's going to go off. Don't panic. It's just a drill. We're just practicing.
Yeah. After 9/11, and when I worked in Manhattan, if the Navy or whatever was going up the Hudson with their jets, they're like, heads up, there's going to be low-flying planes today. Like the city would get like emails sent out to people, just like nobody panic. So this is the opposite of that. Police said the charity paid Channels $2,500 to carry out the mock shooting and went along with his request to not inform employees beforehand. So they were like, should we let our employees know? And Channels was like, don't worry. I know I'm only 27 and you don't know this, but I don't have experience. But no, you don't want to tell your employees. Trust me.
Which, I mean, on its face, I kind of understand. Like, if you want to have a real drill and want to see what real people are going to do in a real situation, make it a mock situation. But with the amount that this happens in America, you can't do that. You can't. The risk is not worth the reward.
One employee told the World Herald that in her panic at hearing the gunfire, she fled the building and leapt from a retaining wall, intending to land and hide in a dumpster several feet below. She missed and landed on the ground, where she curled up in pain before she ran several blocks to a restaurant. If you're a parent with kids at home and you hear the gunfire, like, people could have jumped out high-rise windows in this situation. Like, people could have died. Omaha Catholic Charities Executive Director Denise Bartels said in a statement that they hired Channels based upon recommendations from respected sources and that he clearly misrepresented himself and his qualifications. Bartels said that Channels did not follow agreed upon procedures and did not communicate properly with police. We deeply regret following his recommendations and selecting him for the training.
You think?
She added that staff members will continue to be offered mental health support. This gave people like PTSD. This fucked people up.
Rightfully so.
I mean, if you're that lady who had to run to a restaurant to seek shelter,
covered in blood, probably
a huge introspection. Like, you're like, oh, I'm not fucking ready for this. Like, if you
and I'm gonna say
think it was real.
Omaha Catholic Charities probably isn't a bunch of young spry whippersnappers.
Oh,
you know
no,
what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Channels was arrested and jailed on Tuesday and did not have an attorney representing him or the terror charges as of Wednesday.
I'm just going to give him some free legal advice. This is something you want a lawyer for. You don't want to defend yourself for this one.
Well, this gets worse here. At the time of his arrest, he was already out on bond for charges in a separate case accusing him of sexually assaulting a minor. So this guy is just a total grifter piece of shit.
Yeah.
Who lied about everything, got hired, and then caused a bunch of people at Catholic Charities probably everlasting PTSD. Channels told those at Catholic Charities who hired him that he conducted other active shooter drills and that law enforcement officers would be present during the drill. But the police say not only were officers not present, they had no idea. So they then were getting a ton of, this is how the situation could have really exploded. They started getting panicked employees' phone calls saying, there's a shooter here. There's a shooter here. So they
this could have been really, really
with guns drawn to the scene. Douglas County prosecutor Don Klein said the mock drill could have had dire consequences, such as a panicked employee suffering a heart attack or Channels himself being shot by someone else or an officer. Someone could have gotten killed. He said, just think of the potential things that could have happened with this. It's frightful. And my final note on this, like, active shooters has become a cottage industry. Dealing with active shooters has become a cottage industry. There are people selling wacky door jams and things that you can wear on your person, and their personal experience for
the most
active shooter
insane
drills.
type of things to put on your keys. They look like brass knuckles with fucking spikes on the end. And so many of these things are like, oh, is this a good idea? Sure, that's a good idea. But if you're a 5'1" small person and trying to hit me with those, one, that's not gonna do any real damage. Like, the things that they're putting out here are not gonna help you survive a fight, and sometimes they're not gonna help you in an active shooter situation. It's just a grift, like just
especially in these active shooter. Like, we're like, as a parent now, like, so that's my new, as a veteran now, I say as a parent, that's my new qualifier. But I would be so gullible to anything I think could help my son or myself protect him in some situation.
Backpacks.
It makes you incredibly vulnerable. And a lot of these pieces of shit out there know that. And there's probably also, I promise you, there's a ton of other, maybe they're not doing crazy drills like this, but they're selling all sorts of stuff and all sorts of expertise that they don't have. And I do think a lot of people feel like just because someone served, they must know. Buddy, 98% of us, and that's being generous, don't know what the fuck we're talking about when it comes to like dealing with an active shooter drill. No. Like, are you kidding me? No, we don't.
No, not at all. That's not something that we would. I
no.
never did anything.
Well, I know how to pie a doorway. Don't get me wrong, but that's not gonna help. Like, so
no,
it's just crazy. But I thought that was one of the craziest examples, and all I could think about was how many others there are out there.
And one other aspect of this story that's super dangerous, because of the police response in Uvalde and how much shit they got on the internet. You might see police departments completely correct the other way, where they don't want that type of thing. And they're going in, they hear guns in there. They're going in fucking guns blazing. I could see that happening too.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
So I don't know what this guy thought was going to happen. I don't know.
Because that's the thing. What do you think? I mean, think about this. And I've told this story before about, like, training to go to Iraq, and then the first time you hear gunfire and people react differently. And that's people in the military who are going somewhere to expect to hear gunfire. People who go to their offices every day, by and large, I would imagine most people never expect to hear gunfire in their life. So why would you
Unless there's a desk pop or something.
Oh, desk
sometimes
pop.
there's a desk pop. That's a given.
Yeah.
But if you're this director, I mean, this is so much. I mean, we're crapping on this guy, and rightfully so. But so much of this, I think, is on the director too, for not, thinking maybe a little outside the box. Like,
this is when you go to page 2 on Google. You just don't take page 1 results.
Yeah. How might my employees react to hearing blanks being fired and not being told what's going on?
I mean, how does this boss walk in? Does he or she walk in and like, hey, sorry guys. Hey,
yesterday I maybe should have told that.
Fucking, do you guys see this guy? You see him? Fucking, what's his name? Church? Who hired that guy?
Yeah.
What a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to something else different and weird. That's going to be our story from Colin O'Brady. The first time I heard this story blew my mind talking to him, because when you speak to somebody who's like this, that goes across Antarctica by yourself, I got to admit, when I heard about him, that I had the opportunity to interview, I was like, this guy's going to be a fucking weirdo. Like, because if yes, everybody who does these Appalachian trails, the fucking that go up and down the Pacific Coast highway or whatever that trail is, almost all these people that could spend months alone are fucking weirdos.
That's what I want to be.
Right. You proved my point.
Exactly.
Like, just a big old weirdo. And this dude was not only not a weirdo, he's very, very inspiring. So much so, I think I got honey dipped in the interview. We'll talk about it whenever it's done. Here's Colin Obrady. Now on Zero Block 30, I'm privileged to have Colin O'Brady. Now, normally I don't go through like Wikipedia style bios and shit like that. But you guys, and I'm going to make Colin sit here for this because this shit is legitimately ridiculous. It says that he was an American professional endurance athlete, motivational speaker and adventurer, a former professional triathlete representing the United States, raced in 25 countries on 6 continents from 2009 to 2015. A 4-time world record holder, which I actually think is a 10-time world record holder.
You know, they got to update Wikipedia's got to get on their game, man.
I'm about to update this shit right now. In 2016, he went to the Explorers Grand Slam, 7 summit speed records, the latter of which has since been broken 6 times. He became the fastest person to complete the Adventurers Challenges 139 days and 131 days, respectively. And then in the summer of 2008, he got the speed record for the highest 50 U.S. points in just 21 days, which is bananas. And then maybe the piece de resistance is the December 26, 2018. He completed his solo cross across, you might have heard of it, fucking Antarctica, which is just nuts, man. And that was the first thing when I started searching about you to prepare for this interview. One of the first things that came up, it's got like 15 million views or something like that. It's when you first step off the plane in Antarctica. Now, I know being a Marine that when I first stepped off into Fallujah, I was like, holy shit, this is different than what I thought. When you got to Antarctica and you actually stepped out and it was going to be step number 1, was it overwhelming as fuck?
Dude, it was insane. You know, you have Antarctica in your mind kind of as this far off in the middle of nowhere place, you know, think, oh, maybe I'm never going to go there. Then I start dreaming about it. And like, can I be the first person in history to cross the entire landmass solo, pulling a 375-pound sled with all my gear? So that means unsupported. Like, no one's dropping anything off from me along the way. And I have this tiny little cargo plane. Obviously, there's like no logistics down there, but I get this guy to take me on this cargo plane, drop me off on the edge of the frozen continent, step out of the plane takes off. And all of a sudden you're like, shit, man, like I'm really alone out here.
I made a huge mistake.
Like, it's one thing to like think about, oh, that's gonna be epic, whatever. It's another thing to like have that feeling, just like this sinking feeling. And it was overwhelming, man. The scale and scope of Antarctica, I know it's cliche to say, but it's like one of those things, like until you see it, like it's just so vast and so wide and so white, and just like it's hard, your brain like can barely comprehend it. And the thing that was probably the most ridiculous on the first day was I was, like I said, 375-pound sled trying to put as much food and fuel in there. People had died previous to me attempting this crossing. People had run out of food and supplies. And that's because with unsupported, like if you took 1,000 pounds of food, you'd have enough food, but you would never be able to pull your sled on the first day. You're trying to like have this happy medium. And I knew that I would never be able to carry enough. So I knew I was going to lose like 30, 40, 50 pounds out there. But I start pulling my sled on the very first day, like yanking on it, like trying to pull as hard as I can. I get it like 10 steps, bro. Like I have 1,000 miles to go. And like, I can't move this thing more than 10 steps.
So many listeners on this show have like carried heavy packs in all kinds of places around the world. I've carried packs in heavy places all across the globe. 40, like we're talking maybe at most like 120, 130 pounds with like food and dog food and things like that. I was a dog handler. But when you're talking about that much where people, why didn't you have enough food for that much time where you're going to be burning 10,000 calories a day? I don't think people really understand. That's like carrying a pallet from Costco everywhere you go across the Antarctica.
Exactly, it's ridiculous. And so, I guess I'm not too proud to admit it, but it's kind of funny. I know I think of myself as a pretty tough guy. You're obviously a very tough guy, but man, after the first hour or so, I just started crying, bro. Mm-hmm. Like I just literally started crying, and I was like 1,000 miles. I just told everyone in my family. I did big, interview with the New York Times. I'm going to do this crossing. Like hour 1, I've made it like a quarter mile, and I'm like, I am fucked.
And honestly, that part of your story where because that was one of the first things that I heard in one of your interviews, and in your book, you talk about it as well, where you get there and it's almost like so mentally overwhelming and so heavy that you almost like want to give up, and your mind is like, oh my God, there is no way I could possibly do this. And that's the reason why I agreed to do the interview. Like I wanted you on the show because of that reason. Yeah. A lot of times I read a book recently about this dude who spent 28 years in rural Maine, completely by himself, living in a tent, living as a hermit. And I thought I would never want this dude on a podcast because he's got to be the weirdest motherfucker alive. When I heard that you went across Antarctica, I was like, there's no way he's going to be conversational, that he's going to have all kinds of skills to talk and communicate. But you're not weird at all. You're like a normal dude who did some crazy, crazy shit. And before we get back into the Antarctica story, I want to start in the beginning of your physical journey after your injury. Could you tell people kind of the process of what happened to you when you went to Thailand, when you were a young man?
Yes. And I will say just the end cap on the Antarctica piece is, when you cry in Antarctica and it's minus 40 degrees, Antarctica doesn't give a fuck because it freezes the tears to your face. So I had frozen tears on my face in hour 1, minute 1 of this thing. Taking it back to Thailand, man. Look, I guess Wikipedia needs to be updated, but I humbly sit here with 10 world records. But all those world records were set after serious tragedy in my life, not before, after. The brief story is really, I was, after college, I always dreamed of seeing a bit of the world. Didn't have a lot of money when I was a kid, just had big dreams, didn't have money, didn't go on like extravagant trips. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest in Portland, Oregon, and my family would just take me, hiking and, go outside in the wilderness. That's kind of how I got introduced. That my dad would say, like, we don't have a lot of money, but the outdoors are free. And it was a great way to grow up. But I was always like, one day I want to see the world. So painted houses when I was a kid, all the way through high school and college. And when I graduated from college, I bought like the cheapest student fare I possibly could to travel around the world, middle seat, back of the plane, crazy stopovers, but just like having an adventure. Incredible experience for the most part. Hitchhiked through a couple countries, backpacked, slept on floors, had enough pocket money for a few beers at night, kind of thing, but it was great. All until I found myself on this beach in rural Thailand. And there was a couple of guys jumping a flaming jump rope that they had soaked in kerosene. And I'm 22 years old at the time, being like, yeah, what could possibly go wrong here?
Gotta
do that. Check that one off the bucket list. Don't recommend it. Just throwing it out there. Word of caution. If you see the flaming jump rope, go in the other direction. Unfortunately for me, it went terribly wrong. I tripped on the rope wrapped around my legs, sprayed with kerosene up my body, lit my body on fire to my neck. And I jumped in to the ocean, which did save my life, but not before about 25% of my body was severely burned, predominantly my legs and feet. The next things that unfold were brutal. I mean, I was placed where no proper hospital, no proper medical facility. I had a moped ride down a dirt path to this tiny little one-room nursing station and shack. Underwent 8 surgeries over the next week or so in remote parts of Thailand. There's a cat running around my bed and across my chest in the ICU. I mean, just like a bad set of circumstances you don't want to be in. And, the one, I guess, positive thing that has come from this is my mother. My mother, shows up and she instills in me just this belief in like, this is terrible, but let's figure out how to get through this. Right. And I know certainly what you face in the military, so many, bad, negative situations, and you got to figure out how to get through them, how to get through the other side. Right. And I don't pretend like this was anything like being in combat and they're in the military, but it was a bad situation on the other side. No, you don't have to be
self-deprecating. It's true, man. And jumping into the water and doing all that kind of shit. It's tough no matter what your background is. And can you talk us a little bit? Because a lot of times you talk about your mother and how her coming really shifted your mindset. We talk a lot about mental struggles on this show, and we talk a lot about PTSD, and we talk about how depression is rough. When you're laying there, you kind of gloss over it now with the cat going, but it couldn't have been great emotionally or mentally for you. Can you talk about where you were at in those moments?
I mean, it's completely devastating. I mean, it's one thing to be afraid and be in this far off place, far away from home. So that was scary. Another thing to be in excruciating physical pain, which was horrible. But I'll never forget, the doctor comes in on day 4 and he looks me in the eyes and he says, hey, I hate to tell you this, but I just got to be honest with you. You will probably never walk again normally. And I'm lying there in a hospital bed in Thailand by myself. And like all of a sudden, the physical pain and where I was didn't matter anymore. The emotional pain was deep and dark, man. I mean, like full depression, anxiety, panic attack, and just like I felt like just like walls were closing in on me, just downward spiral circling in my brain. And that emotional, I mean, I think more than anything, I love to say the most important muscle any of us has is the 6 inches between our ears. And I say that intentionally because it can be such a strength. And ultimately I figured out how to take this adversity and turn it into a strength, but it can also be the biggest detriment to us. It doesn't matter how physically strong you are. If your mind isn't sharp, if you're in a dark place in your mind, in the corners of your mind, it's really hard to pull yourself out of that. And, my mother absolutely had a huge impact on this moment for me in terms of mindset. I now call it this. I didn't call it this at the time, but I call what she did next the possible mindset. And I write about it in my new book, The 12-Hour Walk. This is what I had described that as an empowered way of thinking that unlocks a life of limitless possibility. She said to me, she's like, look, this is a terrible situation. This is scary. This is horrible. But let's look towards the future. Let's look towards the positive outcome. It doesn't matter a year from now, 5 years from now, what do you want to be doing? And I was like, I don't really want to play this game of my life as I know it's over. But she finally got me to close my eyes and visualize any sort of positive, because I don't care what it is. Whatever pops into your brain first, tell me what it is. And I opened my eyes and I'm like, okay, it's going to sound ridiculous, but I just saw myself in my best version of myself crossing the finish line of a triathlon. And that's not something I'd literally ever done before in my entire life. And my mom is a badass, and she's obviously been such a positive influence. But in this moment, this was like really my life changed in this moment, because she could have so easily been like, I said set a goal, but like your legs and the blood and like, what the doctors just said, like maybe let's do the visualization again, try something else. And instead she was like, actually, like, great, you're going to race a triathlon. In fact, I can already see you racing it too. In fact, you should start training right now. And so immediately she takes that visualization into action. She yells over to the Thai doctor and says, hey, doc, my son's training for a triathlon. This Thai doctor's like, what the hell are you talking about? He's like, yeah, actually bring him in some weights. He needs to start training right now. And I have this ridiculous photo of myself in a Thai hospital, bandaged from the waist down, like blood and pus, like seeping out of my wound. And I'm lifting 10-pound dumbbells. And the Thai doctor's in the corner with this look on his face, like, what the hell is this kid think he is? My mom's like, he's training for a triathlon. And like, look, long story short, to the end of the story basically is I was burning the fire. Several months in the Thai hospital, flown home, still in a wheelchair, still bandaged up, carried on and off the plane. Eventually learned how to walk over a series of months with PT and my mom's help, et cetera. And then 18 months after being burned in the fire, I signed up for the Chicago Triathlon, raced the Chicago Triathlon. And to my complete and utter surprise, I actually won the entire Chicago Triathlon, placing first out of, nearly 5,000 people. Now, it will be easy to look at that and be like, well, the moral of the story is I'm just an amazing athlete, whatever. And like, to me, that's so far from the point of the story.
But it's part of it for sure.
But I learned, because I look and I go, had my mom not been there and sort of pushed that mindset on me, that possible mindset, I wouldn't be sitting here 15 years later with you having this conversation. I wouldn't have the 10 world records. I wouldn't have the mental fortitude. So from this lowest moment in my life, I didn't just learn this about myself. And what I love to share it in my new book, The 12-Hour Walk, is all about how all of us have this capacity to conquer our own minds and really push beyond the adversity in our life. And I love to say that, as humans, I fundamentally believe all of us, every single person on this planet, is sitting on a reservoir of untapped potential. And again, flexing and developing those 6 inches between our ears is the difference between actualizing and realizing, your highest potential and not.
And the distance between being in a Thai hospital and winning the Chicago Triathlon can seem monumental for somebody that went through what you're doing. And my therapist always calls it she calls it the audacity of perseverance, where even though like most people looking at your situation would say that to be in that Thai hospital and say, I'm going to do a triathlon, there's a lot of audacity in that statement. Like that so many people have suffered and they have gone through different things and they won't walk. Like usually that doctor might have been right, but the audacity of your desire to persevere just so far exceeded what I think we normally think that we can comprehend. And once you actually do it, you look around and you can see that other people can do more. Is that kind of how you felt too?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it comes down to taking that action, like taking those first steps, actually saying like, it seems ridiculous, but you're like, I don't know, do something about this today. Like that, the distance, the Chicago Triathlon, when you're lying there in Thai hospital seems so far that you're like, well, why would I even do one thing that would have be a 0.001% benefit? Like lifting the 10-pound dumbbells probably didn't have any real impact on me doing that, other than it was like, I'm doing something. When I've been fortunate enough to summit Mount Everest twice in my life. And the first time I summited in 2016, which was a part of that Explorers Grand Slam World Record project that you mentioned in the intro, I get to the summit of Mount Everest. And that was a childhood dream of mine. Like since I was a little kid, I always said, I want to climb Everest one day. I want to climb Everest one day. So this is, I was in my early 30s at the time. So it was, 30 years in the making, basically that dream. And remember, I get to the top. Obviously, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, but I'm elated. It's this moment I've been dreaming about for so long. And I look down, and on the ground, what I see is, of course, snow, of course, ice, of course, huge drop offs on either side. But I also see a bunch of small rocks, little stones, right? Mm-hmm. And I reached down and I picked one up and I put it in my pocket, and I've carried that little rock, tiny little rock pebble in my pocket for years with me now. And I carry it as a reminder that even Mount Everest, even that distance that you're saying between the sitting in the Thai hospital and the triathlon, that even Mount Everest can be broken down to its smallest parts, a bunch of small rocks stacked on top of each other, many steps leading to the summit. And I just carry that. To me, that's that reminder of when I have the audacity, the audacity to dream, the audacity of perseverance. Like, you can set big goals, but it is so easy to be just, that's 10 years in the future. That's so far away. Like, I'm this right now. I'll never become that. Right. Mm-hmm. But if you just keep chipping away, if you keep stacking those little pebbles, before you know it, even the biggest mountain in the world is a bunch of small rocks, millions of steps leading to the summit. And to me, that's just been a really powerful metaphor to me to stay in touch with as I continue to dare to dream greatly in all other aspects of my life. And I also fight the negative self-talk that we all have. And my whole book is about the limiting beliefs we have when we dare to dream greatly. Immediately go, oh, that's too far away. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. That's too hard. I don't like being right. That's part of being human, is having a little bit of that negative dialogue. But the other part of I think, taking full control of the human experience is figuring out how to fight back against that and have tricks and tools in place to continue to make that forward progress.
And when you're finding those next goals, because you're real big on accomplishing the goal and then moving on to the next one, and not kind of sitting stagnant, but moving forward. And one aspect that I liked about your book was the military aspect, where you talked about the special forces guy from England that was trying to do the race, or wasn't a race for you at first, but he was trying to cross Antarctica at the same exact time. Did you find, whenever he was ahead of you, that it was almost easier to have a mindset? For me, for example, when I'm running against someone, if I'm running a race, it's so much easier for me to see someone ahead of me and be like, motherfucker, you're about to get passed. I'm about to pass you, and chasing them down, than when you're the lead dog. Did you experience that in your first 6 days?
Totally. So yeah, when I say I got dropped off on the cargo plane, what I didn't fail to mention earlier is that it turned out that there was another guy attempting the same crossing at the exact same time. We both trained for it. We both planned for it for a year. Didn't announce it to the world until a few days before we're leaving. So I find myself shoulder to shoulder in a cargo plane with a British Special Forces badass by the name of Captain Lou Rudd, who also is extremely experienced in Antarctica. And I'm like, oh, well, it's one thing to say I was going to race history or something like that. It's another thing to like this badass, legendary, military dude stare me in the eyes. And when I got out of that plane, I said, and I tried to pull my sled and I couldn't pull it that first day. Lou didn't have that problem. There was no frozen tears for him. He just kicked my ass and disappeared from the horizon. I was like, shit, this is part of why I was crying, probably, because I thought, I could hang with this guy for a while. He might beat me in the end, but and he just kicked my butt like day one, minute one. But it's interesting. I did eventually catch up to him on day 6. I did eventually pass him, and I did eventually complete the crossing first. I finished becoming the first person in history to do it in 54 days, and he finished a few days behind me. And, I write a lot about this in both of my books, the intensity of that battle, the intensity of the competition. But I love the way you framed it, which is him and I both agree that neither one of us would have made it to the other side had the other one not been there. And because we were both there, we both made it. And what we agree by that, and again, I'm proud that I was first by a few days, but the intensity of the battle held me accountable so much. So my new book is called The 12-Hour Walk. It's because I walk 12 hours every single day in Antarctica, in the silence, in the stillness. And we can talk about what that is and what the call to action is for people out there listening, because I'm really excited about that global movement. But as it relates to Captain Lou, once I passed him and I started doing 12 hours as my normal day, there are so many days in Antarctica. It is -40. It's the windiest continent on the planet. So typically 50, 60 mile per hour winds, headwinds, because I'm going uphill and the winds spill downhill, called katabatic winds. So imagine a 50, 60 mile an hour headwind, blizzard conditions, whiteout, -40 degrees outside. It's one thing to be out there for like an hour, and even that's brutal. But I start doing the math and going, there's no way I'm going to stay ahead of Lou. There's no way I'm going to have enough food unless I pull my sled 12 hours per day. Now, it is typical in polar travel when it gets that gnarly to take a day off. to rest, to be like, yo, like I got to take a day off. I got to rest, recover, recoup. But every time I had that,
and that's conventional wisdom, and endurance is
totally
like, know your limits and know your boundaries, and don't try to push forward too much because you could end up dead.
100%. However, because Captain Lou, at first he was in front of me, and then him being behind me, chasing me effectively, I didn't know how far he was behind me. I kept thinking to myself, well, what if he's more badass than me? And I think it's too hard to go today, but he goes. And this is the day that he takes back the lead. Or this is a day he catch after all, effort I've put into putting up, and I'm just too soft to get outside my tent. Two things happen. One is I literally never took a day off. I walk 12 hours per day, every single day, no matter the weather conditions. And that's basically never been done in a polar expedition. But here's why that's important. I finished on my last bite of food. Basically, I was a bag of bones. My hips were sticking out. My ribs were sticking out. I didn't have any more food left. And I made it to the very end, which means that if I had taken a day off on day 12 and a day off on day 17, or walked 10 hours instead of 12 hours, every single day for this, I would have been nowhere near the finish line. But this ever-present Captain Badass Lou Rudd chasing me the whole time was the thing that I needed, which goes to show, like, what you're saying about being in a race, like, there's something about the heat of battle. I mean, there's no Coca-Cola without Pepsi. You can make other metaphors for that, which is that, like, sometimes the heat of the battle brings out the best in you. And for me, and I say this, and like I said, Lou and I, after the intensity of the battle, we've maintained a friendship, which is just a deep level of respect and camaraderie towards one another.
Well, I would imagine so. Doing something like that together doesn't mean you're not going to separate and never speak again. Well, I mean, maybe if he would have passed you a couple of times, maybe you've been pissed off.
No, we're just like, look, there's 7 billion people on the planet. There's one other dude that knows what it's like to pull a sled solo like that. It's like, yo, like, I want to be able to call that guy up and shoot him a text now and again and be like, how you doing, brother?
Right. And I think one of the aspects that really is interesting to me, because doing this and preparing, this is not like you can hop on your United app and book a flight to Antarctica and just start doing this. Like they don't have those flights. It takes a long time to get there. And I imagine part of the process in preparing is coming up with different scenarios in your mind that you might face and what you're going to do. Like if the wind is picking up and you have 80, 90 mile an hour winds that are still 40 miles an hour, what do you do? But even then, preparing for all the different things that you possibly can, you essentially, like that old Mike Tyson saying, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You got punched in the mouth day one with new adversity, not knowing that somebody was going to be along there beside you. We talk about the beginning of the journey and the end of journey. Can you talk us through some of those moments that you were maybe just a little bit shy of halfway or a third into the way? Because I imagine those are the parts that are very, very difficult.
I think that's very, I don't get asked that question often enough, but it's such an important question, which is, you can get hyped up at the beginning, even though I was afraid and crying and whatever. You're like, it's the beginning, your body's fit and whatever. When you start, I love to say, the horses, right? They can start to smell the barn, at some point you get close enough and you're like, okay, I can push. It's the end. It's all this kind of stuff. But I remember saying to my wife when I was planning, I was like, I feel like day 20 is like a trap. Day 25. It's like the press and media, my own excitement, whatever is worn off. He's like, I'm doing this thing, but you're like so far from the finish line, but you're far enough in that your body is declining and you're beat up and you've been alone for a long time or whatever. And like, no doubt about it. Like there was that grind in the middle. And I think that is so true. I'll expand that beyond Antarctica, other businesses I've started, other expeditions I've been on. I think it applies to other people and their hopes and goals and dreams, right? You can have that initial spark. You're like hanging with a buddy and you're like, yo, let's run that marathon next year. Let's train for that. Like it was whatever. And like, maybe like week 1, you're like getting after it. You're running every day. You're starting to feel healthy, whatever that is for you. And then you're like, oh man, that marathon's like 6 months from now. Like, I don't really want to do this every day for the next 6 months, right? The same thing. It's like race days right around the corner. You can be fired up about it, but there's something about that consistency in the middle. And it was tough, man. Like, look, like I don't pretend like I just like rode high the entire time. One of the things that I have learned in the end, and I was now remind myself of this, which is, so I've kind of, finishing Antarctica, touching that post, becoming the first was a massive life highlight for me. It was a culmination of a life's work and really tested me to the very edges. I've come to think about life on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being these high moments, these peak moments. And that you can apply that other ways, right? Falling in love, skiing a perfect, seeing a powder, dancing, sitting in the sun on a beautiful beach, hanging with your wife or spouse, whatever that, we know these great moments. You're just having
first
fun.
beer on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Cracking that beer, whatever that is for you. It's just like, yeah, hell yeah. Like I want more of this in my life. And ones are these low moments, like being burned in that fire in Thailand, all sorts of tragedy to be faced, setbacks, just like tough moments. And of course, we live a life where like, well, I want the 10s and I don't want the ones 100%. Like, why would you want the ones? But I've zoomed out from that a little bit and I've started to realize that I actually realized that my 10s, all of those peak moments, are actually connected to the ones in some way. And I don't often get there in spite of my ones, but actually because of them. That post on the other side of Antarctica, when I finished it and completed it, was built on the back of a willingness to be challenged, a willingness to be uncomfortable, a willingness to have that cold on my face and the fear and the frozen tears, and have Lou kick my butt and all the things culminated in this peak life experience. And I bring that up in this context to say, you don't have to go walk across Antarctica by yourself, but in that middle section, when you're struggling, when you're strained, when you're trying to battle, you have to, at some point, you have to have a why. You have to remember and you go, oh, I am feeling an insane level of adversity right now. You could either frame that as, I want this to stop. I want to quit. That's what happens with a lot of people. But I have framed that. And again, I talk about this a lot in my book, The 12-Hour Walk that just came out. I say, embrace the ones. I'm not saying seek out the ones in some crazy masochistic way, but I'm saying when they come, embrace them. Tell yourself, I am feeling this intense moment right now, but that actually means that I've probably opened up a doorway or a portal to somehow feel the 10, to experience the highs of life. Because I think too often in our modern society, particularly, people get stuck in what I call this zone of comfortable complacency, this zone between 4 and 6. Like you go to a job, you don't love it, you don't hate it, like it's fine, but it's 365 days in a row of 5, 5, 5, 5. Or you're in a relationship, like, it's not toxic, it's not abusive, it's just like you're cohabitating and it's just like 5, 5, 5. And I'm not saying don't ever feel 5s, but I'm saying if you have a lifetime only full of 5s in this zone of comfortable complacency, yeah, sure, you've hedged against the ones, but you've also taken the 10s off the table. And I believe anyways, that the juice, the deep fulfillment in life comes from having a full pendulum swing all the way between 1 and 10. And the fullness of experiencing life depends on actually experiencing and allowing yourself to feel some of those ones en route to your 10s.
And I completely agree with that. I mean, we talk on this show a lot about that type of thing. I got shot in 2007, and I remember sitting there underneath the stairwell when I was in Iraq and thinking, this might be the end. The life that I lead now is basically going to be over. I might lose my arm. I don't know if my kids are going to be embarrassed of me. And that was very much a one moment for me. But now the way that my mindset shifted after that event, and how much more I embrace life, embrace being around my kids, and how much more I appreciate life when it was almost gone. It does. I almost do look back at that point as being like the turning point in my life to become the person that I am now. I am not sitting in this seat. I am not the person I am without that horrific moment. And I would venture to say probably not you either, even though you were a high level athlete and you went to Yale and you have all these other accolades that you were clearly on the right track. I think people look at your story, especially military members, and can see this was a big struggle. And whether you're having that struggle mentally and just between the 6 inches between your ears, like you say, or if it's something that's actually endurance based and out there physically challenged, you can look at it from that way and embrace the fact that you had to go through some adversity to get where you are. But where's the next step? How do you continue to find the next step for yourself, Colin?
Well, I love asking this question, what's your Everest, to people, because I frame it around my own childhood dream, which was Everest. And it's an easy metaphor for what's your big hope, your big goal, your whatever. And even after I climbed Mount Everest now twice, I still am not like, cool, so I'm going to kick my feet up and do nothing for the rest of my life. Candidly, what I'm really passionate about right now, not just because, I'm in the midst of a little bit of a book tour, the book that I just came out with, The 12-Hour Walk, I am deeply passionate about it because of the call to action, because of what is really speaking to my heart right now is to not just be like, oh, cool, I learned these lessons walking across Antarctica. I'm saying, hey, I'm a human being. I have struggled. I have failed. I have had successes along the way. And I have learned a few things about that. And I think as humans, I want to live on a planet where more people are living with that possible mindset in the context of their own lives. I'm not saying, hey, let me teach you how to walk across Antarctica, but what is your efforts? What is your hope? What is your dream? And the 12-hour walk, the book itself, it breaks down the 10 most common limiting beliefs we all face and how we can conquer our own minds. Again, those are, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. What if I fail? What if people criticize me, et cetera? These loops that I've experienced, we've all experienced. And the book will entertain you. It's not some like boring, textbook or some, over the top, personal development book. This is a book where you're going to be in a rowboat with me rowing across Drake Pass, just 40-foot swells and icebergs. You're going to be on the side of K2 in Pakistan with me, battling for my life. You're in these action moments. But at its core, I say, I'm not the hero of this story. I'm going to share you some stories about my life where I've gotten it wrong, where I've messed up, where I've figured out how to adjust my mindset and thrive. But you, the reader, or if you like audiobooks, you, the listener, are the hero of this story, because at its core is a call to action. And that call to action is I'm inviting people to take one day, put it on their calendar. It's completely free. Walk out the front door, put your phone on airplane mode, no podcast, no music, and take a 12-hour walk. And there's a whole origin story. I touched on it briefly of how that came to be around Antarctica and my own struggles with mental health and depression and anxiety during COVID lockdown, and finding this as an antidote for me. And look, I don't care if you go for 1 mile or 50 miles. I don't care if you take as many breaks as you want. But what I do care is you take one day in the stillness and silence of your own mind to be outside with yourself. And I have found now thousands of people all around the world. My goal is to inspire 10 million people to take this walk. And like I said, it is free. I'd love for you to sign up on my website, because that just keeps you accountable to have a day.
You're such an audacious person, man. Like you're ridiculous. Like telling people to go out 12 hours and knowing that you've done it in Antarctica is legitimately fucking crazy. Like you are the type of person who sets these goals that everybody else around you directly is like, what the fuck is Colin talking about? But while I'm sitting here, I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. If he could do it in Antarctica, I'm going to do it in Texas.
Hell yeah, man.
In West Virginia. We're going to do it in New Jersey, wherever. But it is, and you have to know that you're audacious, right?
It is audacious. But what I love about this is I like to say to people, that's outside of people's comfort zone, to be silent, to be off our phones for a day, to be present with ourselves. Why? Because I believe that actually the answer, we always look for all this external things. Oh, the answer's out there. It's in my Instagram. It's in this book. It's in this podcast. And look, I love my Instagram. I love music. I love podcasts. I love all of those things. I'm just saying, don't do that for the rest of your life. For one day, take a day to look and the book guides through this a little bit more, but look inside your own brain, your own mind, your own psyche. There is so much power from within. Is it audacious? Yes. But right now, this book's only been out for a couple of weeks. I already have people sign up across the world. Every single day, people are taking this 12-hour walk in every time zone around the world. Today, literally right now, there's someone in Paris, there's someone in Cambodia, there's someone in Thailand, there's hundreds of people in the United States doing this walk right now. Because I'm like saying, you want to change your life? Yo, there's a million barriers. I can't take that trip. That's too far. That's too expensive. I'm telling you, you want to really change your life? Walk out your freaking front door and spend a day by yourself. You will be surprised. Every person I have known,
a day with themselves.
Yes. And every person I have known to battle against their own demons, to say, you know what, like you did, you know what, I'm putting this on my calendar. I'm doing this. They come back to their front door changed in a better way, better husbands, better spouses, better parents, better in their careers, better at their goals, more lit up by life. My 77-year-old mother-in-law did the 12-hour walk. For her, that looked like walking one time around her block, sitting on her front door in silence, and walking another time around her block. And that is the 12-hour walk. There's no distance. This is not a race. This is you versus you going into your own mind. I invite people to do it on any single day of the year. You can sign up for free on my website, and that just holds you accountable. And I'll send you some emails to, keep you pumped up towards your goal. But on September 10th, I'm inviting mass participation. So we are, if it's in flow, depending on when you're listening to this, September 10th is a day where there are thousands of people all around the world signed up. You're still doing it alone, still doing it from your front door, but the accountability of knowing there are a lot of other people out there in community doing this thing. And like I said, it is simple. This could be a blog post, this could be a tweet, and the book is a lot more than just this call to action. But at its core, I'm like, yo, if you're listening to this, walk outside your front door, put your phone in airplane mode, download my app so you can track your walking, you know where you walk, you don't get lost, but that is it. Literally, that is it. And you will be a different person on the other side. And you know this, man, you've carried some packs. It sounds like walk some distances. There's something to be found when you're getting the flow of moving your body, being outside, and hopefully in a non-combat environment, it's the stakes are a little bit lower, but still there's something within all of us that we can unlock from stepping into a little bit of discomfort. And yes, will you feel a little bit of maybe a 2 or a 3? Are your feet going to get tired at some point if you're on your feet for a lot of hours? Yeah, hour 3, hour 4, hour 5. You might ask yourself, like you asked me in the middle, why the hell am I doing this? You know, you might have to battle with your own mind. Should I just turn around and go home right now? This is stupid. No one even knows I'm doing this. I have never known somebody to get through the 12 hours, to get back to their front door and go, yep, I experienced a 2 or a 3. But I'm at my front door and now I'm an 8, I'm a 9, I'm a 10. That fulfillment from pushing through. The amount of 5 days that we all experience. What'd you do last Tuesday? What'd you do a month ago? What'd you do last year? We don't even remember most of the days that we have.
I promise for breakfast yesterday.
I promise you take on this 12-hour walk. You have the audacity to go after this. I ask you about it 5 years from now. You're going to remember something from this experience and how it imprints and the ripple effect of positivity on the other side.
I think that's awesome, man. I hope people do it. I legitimately want to do it. I'm going to sign up. Kate has said she's going to. I don't know if Cons is because he's an integrity violator, but we're not sure. He might say he is and actually doesn't. Classic West Point guy. But either way, Colin, thanks so much for joining. People are going to buy your book, and he's absolutely right. I think a lot of these books that come out and you're like, oh, there's 10 parts of this. Oh, there's a step. You're like, this is a self-help book. It's not. It's entertaining like a novel. It's written well. The stories are fantastic. You could picture yourself where he's at, but you could do it in the warmth of the comfort of your own home. You don't actually have to go to Antarctica. Pick up the book, go to his website, sign up, and change your life. Colin, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Why'd you roll your eyes at Honey Dick?
I don't know. I don't know. He's an incredible, like a crazy accomplished triathlete. He's got, you're calling him, he's a Yale grad, I think. You're calling him a weirdo.
I told him in the interview. You heard it in the interview that he was a weirdo, but he's an incredibly motivating person. And the idea, now let me see if you guys will do this. 12 hours, one day this year, where you go out and walk without your phone, without anything else, just like hydration, a little bit of food, some sustenance, if I may. Will you guys do that one point in this year?
So here's the thing about not having my phone.
I know, baby. I know there's always going to be excuses.
No. Oh, no, I wasn't thinking of him. I thought, what if I'm a couple miles in and I see like a bear riding a tricycle and I don't have my phone to document it? That's what I was thinking.
That's just a risk you're going to have to take.
But so I also saw on TikTok, because like I talk about, chaps, you know me, I constantly live in a cycle of I'm okay and then I'm in a funk and then I'm okay and then I'm in a big funk. And I always try, I'm like, how do I get out of it? And I just saw this woman on TikTok who, for the month of her 35th birthday, decided she was going to wake up early and walk 10 miles every day. She was taking her phone with her, but just 10 fucking miles every day around her community, blah, blah, blah. And she said after 1 month doing it, it changed her life. And she was going to start doing more and more and more. I'm like, maybe I'll start doing some crazy shit like that every day. I'm not gonna, but I
yeah, 10 miles is a lot to fucking just sign up for out of nowhere. Cons, what about you? 12 hours?
So at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember I walked one day from Hoboken to the GWB and back, and that was like, I don't know, almost like it was like 22 miles, I think. I forget how long that took me. It took a whole bunch of hours, but it was definitely not 12. It was like half of that. It was like 6. And I had somebody with me. Wait, yeah. Do we get to take anybody with us, or
no,
we're just by ourselves?
Totally solo.
I'm going to be honest. I just don't think I have a day where I can just block off 12 hours.
Oh, you do. In a year, you do. Sometime in a year?
You have like
you go golfing all the
days a
time.
month.
Yeah, that's more important to me. That's so much more important to me to go golf.
I think I could do it though.
Well, that's different than you're busy. That's different than I'm too busy to do it. That's I don't want to do it. No,
that's busy.
That's I want to do
important.
Something.
It's important for my mental health. Please don't
I
shame
can do
me
it
like my wife does.
No, I will shame you, and I'm on Team Alex as always there. But anyways, I love this story. I want to try to do it. I think, because I think it could be clearing, and 12 hours is a long time to do it. I really appreciate Colin and him coming on the show and telling his story. It's incredible, and not just that. the fact that 21 highest peaks in 50 days is insane. Like to do that, it's just nonstop. The endurance and the mental fortitude. It's something that we can all learn from. I'm surprised he is not on like the Marine Corps ball guest speaker list. Like he seemed like that's the kind of story that if you're at a military ball, you definitely want to hear. All right, let's move on to round number 3. This is going to be a little bit different. I want to see surviving some other huge momentous types of feats that they have. The first one, this dude that I found, this round number 3, the first one that I found is basically the Arctic version of the Liver King, but I say that he's the Liver King on steroids, on steroids, on steroids. This dude, I've heard about him before. I've seen a couple YouTube videos, but never really dove into it deep. This guy, his name is the Iceman. Wim Hof is a Dutch adventurer and daredevil who ran the Arctic Marathon at minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit while shirtless. He also holds the world record for being immersed in ice for an hour and 44 minutes. He previously held the world record for swimming under ice and prolonged full body contact with ice, and held a record for a barefoot marathon on snow and ice. He attributes his feats to what he calls the Wim Hof method. It's a combination of frequent cold exposure, breathing, and techniques of meditation. Have you guys ever seen this dude?
Yes,
no.
I've had him before, and I do think like you think to yourself, well, mental can only be so much of it. Your body can only take what it can take. But I do truly believe your brain and how you're thinking like controls an enormous amount of how your body reacts to that stuff. Like I think once you start to panic, you do start to lose it, and you do probably fall apart quicker physically than if you. I don't know. I do think
agree.
there's something to that.
I had a coach who always used to say your mind's going to quit well before your body ever will. The human body, I think, is capable of so much more than people realize.
Yeah.
With this too, with the cold stuff. Have any of you ever like been in a cold pool for any sort of treatment?
Yes.
Yeah, you go in the cold pool after the first minute.
Shit.
After the first minute, like the first minute is uncomfortable, but then after the first minute, you're fine. So I mean, I get,
but that goes away.
What's that like for a penis?
And we're talking, this is like 30 breaking ice to get in there too.
Yeah.
This shit is like hyperthermic levels. I mean, I've seen other tough dudes, SEALs, Rangers, Berets, and things like that go do some training with him. Getting in the water that he stays in for like 20, 30 minutes, they get out after like a minute and a half and they're purple. There is a mental mindset that changes and like you get used to this physical level. Some other crazy accomplishments this dude has: speaks 10 languages without using any type of formal courses, raised his kids single-handedly. This is how he found out that he could do all this stuff. His wife died and he wanted to find ways to make himself feel alive again. That's how he got into all this. He said that he's willing to get injected with malaria for science because he's so like in shape, and he feels like that his mind is so powerful that he can get rid of malaria just on his own. Can hold his breath for about 10 minutes.
Imagine if you could get rid of diarrhea.
What?
If I could get rid of diarrhea, be incredible.
With just your mind.
He can hold his breath for 10 minutes. Is that even
10 minutes? Yeah, and he's done it on video with him being underneath for like 9.5 minutes. And that was in this is like freezing water too. He's advanced in yoga, so he's one of the top yogis in the world, and some of the positions that he can do like on ice are insane. He had an intense surgery without taking antibiotics because he gave himself an enema with a fountain jet. So like the fountains that are at like the Bellagio, he essentially sat on one of those with cold water, and it shot into his rectum so hard that it ruptured his like intestines and his butthole and shit like that. The doctor said that he was going to get sepsis. It took him a long time to get recovered, but he said he wanted to do it all on his own because he trusted his own body.
Why would he do that? Why? I didn't see that coming.
Another one that I kept off the sheet for you guys. He can control his own erections at will.
Well, can't you all?
No, yeah. He's able to prevent it. He said even if he gets seduced and like they went into this brothel, all kinds of people touching him and shit, no boners at all.
I'm not as impressed by that one.
Yeah, I'm not either. He ran a full marathon without training or water in a desert. Like after being in all these cold environments, they said, "Can you handle heat?" And he said, "Yes." Hopped on a private jet, went to the Mojave Desert, I think it was, and ran a full-out marathon there with no training or water in a desert, and then rehydrated himself with beer He's a really friendly human being despite being mocked most of his life. That's across the board. Almost everyone says that he is like the nicest dude and the most humble guy that they've come across.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I saw an episode of Goop with Gwyneth Paltrow, and she
Mhm.
takes her girl gang, and they do like in one episode they go take mushrooms in Costa Rica, and another one I'm pretty sure with him they go run off this dock and jump into icy water, and he is their sensei and leads them through it, and they just jump off a dock. They get immediately out, and they're like, "I'm different forever, yay!" It's
Where do you
like,
stand on Gwyneth Paltrow, Kate? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a
I
big
don't-
thumbs down
she's a
for those
wacko.
listening on the audio version only. She gave
Yeah.
the thumbs down. Then the last one, you know how we talk about like microdosing with psychedelics and using mushrooms and weed and all kinds of different shit? Well, this dude says that he doesn't need psychedelics because he can trigger his own DMT gland. Like he knows how to go in and trigger it himself. And that's the way he is able to stay underwater because he adjusts the thinking of his mind frame.
All right, that one I'm kind of impressed by, if that is in fact true.
This one, I think this dude is what the Liver King wants to be, but I feel like it's real. Like this is
Yeah.
the real version of Liver King. What Liver King says that he is, this dude, this is ancestral trait guy.
Right.
Yeah,
I
holy
agree.
shit.
And he's not just throwing around a bunch of fancy words that sound really cool. He's actually
I would love to go to a
living-
concert and be like, "All right, gang, I'm gonna release my Molly deposit,"
be
and
sick.
then I'm
Yeah,
grooving.
right in front of a cop that gets all mad that you have open container. I'm about to do a trip in my brain and there's nothing. You better come out and stop
Nothing you
me.
can do about it.
Ain't shit you can do about it.
Interesting.
So for that one, more impressive, less impressive than Colin O'Brady.
Less.
I'm going to go
I'm a
less
Colin
too.
O'Brady stan.
I mean, 340 pounds across Antarctica by yourself, and then all the
Yeah.
other world records on top of it. I'm going to go with more impressive for Colin
And I
O'Brady.
think now, with the way I'll just speak for myself, how like programmed I am to stare at my phone all day and how much I need to be stimulated. Like it's a very, I hate to admit this, it's a legit challenge for me to just watch a movie all the way through now and not look at my phone during the movie. I'll force myself to
But
do it,
if you can do it, it's a real good movie.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. A lot has to do with how good or bad the movie is. So just the idea of not having my brain stimulated by my phone or a television show or movie or something for that length of time, that's impressive to me. And I
That
know
should
that's
be
not
our
like really the
scale
most impressive,
of
but
movie
yeah.
watching. How many phone checkers is it? Is it a 5
Mhm.
checker? Is it a 3 checker?
Mhm.
Like Top Gun Maverick, that's a no checker. I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
true.
highest form of flattery you can give a movie now. I don't even
Yeah.
feel like
Right.
I need to check my phone the whole time.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right, second up, this guy. So I think we are all in agreement that Collins is more impressive. What about this one?
Mhm.
A dude that is known as head balancer, and that means he can balance things on his head like cars. So he's 6'6", 343 pounds, an absolute fucking unit of a British man. He can balance a 352-pound car solely on his head. Is that more impressive or less impressive than Colin O'Brady?
Less impressive. I'm not
I
interested
had
in
a-
this. That's nothing.
I had a roommate one
Wow.
time. He could bounce a bunch of stuff on his chin, like all
Yeah.
sorts of weirdly shaped things. And for about 5 seconds, you're like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And then you're just not impressed anymore.
And then you
I
look
think
at some
that's the thing.
dickhead in the pool with like a folding chair that's trying to balance. It's like, dude, I'm just trying to swim. Just relax.
Yeah.
Oh
one
no,
cares
that
about
would
this.
that would be pretty cool to me.
That one's better than the car. All right,
Yeah.
next up, 50 marathons in 50 days.
Whew.
Not even close. I don't even think that even scratches the surface of levels of impressiveness.
I mean, it's pretty damn impressive. Friendly reminder: Cons and I both run marathons. Just need to let that be said.
Yeah, I never
Yes.
will. That's
I have as well.
Um,
I have as
Oh,
and
well.
wow.
so
for
has
the record.
Nick.
wow. I'm
I
the
didn't
marathon
train for
version.
mine.
Chapses. I didn't
I'll
train
never
for
do
any
that.
of them.
I honestly don't think I could do it. Like at this point in my life, I don't think I could.
You
I
absolutely
I think
could.
it's mental. I think marathons are mostly mental. If you're not going for like a speed time, as long as you can keep your brain occupied. By the end, I was calling my friends. I was like, "Can you just talk to me for a little bit?" As I was chugging along, I was like, "Tell me a funny story about your life. What's happening?" It was just
Yeah, I
my
mean,
brain.
This is kind of like my buddy Mike Vitti, who walked across the country. He basically walked a marathon just about every day. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Not to say that I'm not saying that's not impressive. That was impressive what he did too. But
This one for me,
it's
I
doable.
think this falls underneath the category that I find myself in because I've done tough things before in my life. I don't feel like I need to do them now. Like I've done incredibly hard things. So now when it comes across that, I'm like, I could do that. I just don't want to do it. And so I will not do it. Next up, a guy who scales building. He's known as the human spider. He's climbed most of the tallest skyscrapers in the world without a rope or any type of climbing equipment, only uses his hands and his climbing shoes. He's climbed the Eiffel Tower, the Sydney Opera House, and the Sears Tower more than once. He's been arrested all across the world. He was even arrested and expelled from China. How do we feel about this guy? I don't care about this fella either.
I don't care about him at all. Okay, Alan.
No, I'm giving this guy a little more credit because there's no safety net. There's no ropes. He's challenging and cheating death every time he gets up on one of those structures. That's a little impressive. But also, what
Why?
a weirdo. Anybody who is willing to do that unprovoked, weirdo.
And you did it once, like I'm going to go climb another building, guys. Okay. Like once you climb the Sears Tower or like the Empire State Building, that should be the end of it. Like, why do you need to keep going? We've already seen that you could do it. Next one. This one really gave me pause because we've all done some fighting, pugil sticks, some mixed martial arts in our day. This one, I cannot imagine how tired you would be. So this one is the longest boxing fight in history. And the days before ringside judges, state commissions, and $1 million payouts, boxers duked it out until one man was left standing. Unsurprisingly, this survival of the fittest approach to the sport often resulted in endless brawls, specifically on April 6, 1893, when Andy Bowen fought longtime stoolie Jack Burt for an unbelievable 111 three-round matches, I guess.
What's that, 333 minutes?
Yeah. 333 minutes of straight fighting. Like
no, 3,000.
No, yeah, no, I don't know what they act. 33,000 minutes, right? No, 3,300.
Long time.
Yeah, either way, 111
7 hours
rounds.
and 19 minutes. It says it right here. 7 hours and 19 minutes.
How do you stand doing that? How?
Well,
111?
back then, people just were more fit because they had to be just by the sheer nature of how we
7
existed
hours
as
and 20
humans.
minutes, Cons?
Bro, they were probably coming straight from the farm where they were doing that on a Tuesday without even blinking.
But dude, imagine too, like we talk about CTE and all that stuff, your brain just taking a beating for that long, which so the ending to this doesn't surprise me. Burke
but after round 6, I mean, what round do you lose all strength where none of your punches land with any type of force?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, like they had, you're hitting hour 15 and it's just like a pillow fight at that point.
We need to get Dave, Dan, and Robbie to call this fight.
The worst is that a referee called it a draw, so neither one of them won after 7 hours and 19 minutes. And then Burke breaks all the bones in his hands were broken during the fight, and Bowen was killed in the ring during his next fight.
Jesus.
So yeah, not great for either one of them.
No. All right. And that last one I'll do. That one I don't think is impressive, obviously. Next one, swimming across the Atlantic Ocean by yourself.
That's bananas. That's impressive.
I get nervous on a surfboard with my feet dangling in the water when it's like 10 feet deep. There's no way. It makes me nervous. You see those like down in the Bermuda Triangle, there'll be those big sea holes where the water's clear blue and then all of a sudden it's like 10,000 feet deep. I'm making that up. But like, and people swim across it real quick. Fuck no. I wouldn't do that for 10 feet, let alone across the entire Atlantic.
So I think the other scary part about it is when you're out in the ocean. So I went on one cruise in my life. It was the only time in my life I've been white trash, and I'll never do it again. I will never go on another cruise. But when you're out there in the middle of the ocean and you look in any direction and there's just nothing but water, that's scary as hell because you can't see any land. You're like, when is this going to end? Everything. And then your mind starts to race about all the things in the ocean that could just come up and eat you. Forget it. I'm not doing that.
So the ship, he was tailed by a boat that had an electromagnetic field that like warded off sharks, apparently.
That's cheating.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I think a lot of these things, even when some folks go across the English Channel, there'll be like another boat with people there. You want to impress me with this one, do it solo. Like that's what I think that's what makes Colin's story so insane. Is that besides the other dude that he didn't know was going to be there, the guy from British Special Forces, he was completely alone, pulling 340 pounds, throwing all of his food, all that shit. This guy has all of his food in the boat. That's cheating. Like I feel like this whole thing, pull a canoe, pull a raft, pull something, and be by yourself or shut up about it. You didn't do it by yourself. You were just in the water for 8 hours a day.
Swimming, yeah.
You basically went hippo.
That's nothing.
Shout out Colin. All right, that's cool. So if you want to do any of these types of major events with all kinds of endurance, might want to wear our friends Rocky boots because your feet will be protected and comfortable. Even if you want to do a stupid ass thing like go up the Appalachian Trail like Kate does, you can wear Rocky boots and do it comfortably where you don't get them blisties. You don't even need to bring moleskin. That's what they say. That's the word on the street. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but you can find out for yourself by going to Rocky Boots and enter the promo code ZBT at checkout. You're going to get 25% off. Again, that's Rocky Boots. They are the absolute best boots in the biz. They have it from whatever military branch of service you are in. If you're a first responder, nurse, construction worker, or hell, if you just like to get out and just put feet on the pavement, they will do that as you like. If you want to do your 12 hours that Colin was talking about, 12 hours in Rocky Boots, my friends, go to rockyboots.com and the promo code ZBT to get 25% off your next set of boots. Let's move on to round number 4. We're going to head on over to Russia. This is a Katie special for this round because she's the only one of the squad here that's actually given birth to a child. So she's the one that's going to be able to explain what it actually would be like to do this. I'll go through the article. It comes from the New York Post because Russian President Vladimir Putin has offered Russian mothers an extraordinary cash bonus if they have 10 or more children, reviving a Soviet era incentive as the nation of 145 million plans for its future. The Honorary Mother Heroine Award, which also offers social benefits, was first established by communist dictator Joseph Stalin. Anytime you can bring back a Stalin policy, you absolutely have to do it. You have to. The initial accolade was handed out to 400,000 citizens, according to the Russian media, and Putin's edition of the award will offer free one-time payment of 1 million rubles. So that's only $16,000, but it comes after the child's first birthday, the 10th child's first birthday. Do you feel
imagine you have that 10th child, you're probably pretty fucking poor, and God forbid the child doesn't make it to its first birthday, you don't get any of that money. And it's not a lot of money anymore.
Not only that, but you've had to pay for 9 children until you get to that point. Like, how expensive is 9 kids?
Right. Crazy.
Would you do this, Kate?
Fuck no. But I'm one and done. I don't know how anyone does more than one. I cannot fathom it. Maybe because I'm old, but no, one and done.
I think this is an interesting part that we didn't get to yet. The bonus is more than the average Russian yearly salary of.
Okay, well, let's take it to the United States, for example. So this sum, instead of 16,000, the average median income in the United States is 41,000. So would you do it for $41,000? Absolutely not. Like,
fuck no.
Even if you're talking yearly salary for the median income in the United States, you ain't taking that shit for fucking 10 kids. You kidding me?
I think too, people say like, yeah, money is great and all, but once you start to lose like parts of your health, you realize that that's the most valuable thing is being in good health. And this, I mean, one kid fucked me up in all sorts of ways physically. Like, I cannot imagine doing that many times. I don't think I could put a dollar amount on it. Like, I really don't.
Really?
100 million, like Nick said.
I mean, 10 kids, you're talking about like at least, if you're having them back to back, that's 15 years of your life. 15.
Yeah. I will say, I know people who have now multiple children, and they just really don't mind it for whatever reason.
Well, a friendly reminder, my grandmom had 13 kids, and back then, like in their neighborhood, I used to think it was special, and like in the Philly burbs, like the Irish Catholic Philly burbs, my dad would be like, "Well, my friend like Tony or whatever, he's one of like 15, or they're one of 6." Like, it wasn't that unusual back then. So it is. I feel like once you cross the threshold of like 5 kids, it's like, fuck it, add a few more on. It doesn't matter anymore.
My friends that have multiple, they always say 4. Once you go over 4 kids, just throw another one in. You won't even notice it. But I'm watching this show right now. It's called The Blended Family on TLC because I love weird TLC reality shows. And the premise of the show might be the saddest of any show that I've ever heard of. So 7 of the kids, they come from one family where the dad died of cancer. And it was like a pretty terrible cancer. And all 4 of the kids have the cancer trait too, where they're like in their lives, 80 to 90% chance that they're going to get some kind of cancer. Very sad premise. The other 4 kids, their mom was involved in a car wreck when all of them and the dad was in a wreck. The only one who died was the mother. Those 2 family members, the dad and the mom, ended up getting married to have 11 kids. When they just show a picture in their house, a video of any moment in their house, it's pure chaos at all times. I don't know how you deal with that. It sure as shit ain't worth it for $51,000. It sure as shit ain't worth that. I mean, my kids, you'd never have a moment of peace. You wouldn't have quiet for 12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess maybe, I don't know what it's like to live in Russia, but I think we're all saying that living in this country and knowing that that's not that large a sum of money. I'm not thumbing my nose at it, but to do what they're proposing for that amount of money, it's not worth it. But maybe in Russia, it is worth it.
Well, also too, all the other 9 children have to survive as well. So as soon as one of them dies, you lose it. You don't get that benefit anymore.
A dumb question. Do kids not make it to their first birthday pretty regularly over in Russia?
I mean, the mortality rates in Russia are pretty high. Yeah. There's parts of this country where the mortality rates are still much higher. It's not something that we talk about a lot, but the mortality rates are still pretty high in this country. But the developed world, we're one of the tops. And
the first year is terrifying for everyone. It's like, oh my, like you have one job and it's the fucking scariest thing. And shit still happens no matter what, even with the best parents. So who knows? But Kristen Roth-I, an expert on Slavonic and Eastern European studies, says this honor was Putin's attempt to bolster the population and encourage a particular strain of nationalism for the population, who have for months now been forced to battle the economic impact of his war with Ukraine. It was about service to the motherland, she said. Obviously a conscious echo of the Stalinist past. So he's trying to, as things are falling apart and he thought he was going to take over Ukraine in a couple days, and that's clearly not what's happening. They're losing a ton of soldiers and
that's the reason why, I think, that's the real reason why they need more conscripts. So you don't get your conscripts without people being born. So that's the reason why they want to have it, so they can increase their population. I mean, it's
crazy,
basically authoritarian leadership 101. All right, let's move on to save rounds and alibis, which today is going to be brought to you by our good friends at Cross Country Mortgage. We're known for having some strong opinions, some strong takes. Even if you're going to go across Arctic Ocean, the Arctic continent, we're going to call you complete weirdo. That happens from time to time. But what we want to do is encourage you to get a good home. CCM listens, understands, and communicates throughout the entire loan process with you, which is important because there's going to be a lot of terms that you might not know about. If you're a first or second or even third time home buyer, there's things that pop up that you just don't know about. Cross Country Mortgage has faster closing times than the competition. They have stable monthly payments and low to no monthly down payments. And they have access to your equity for larger expenses, from debt consolidation to your home renovation. Basically anything you want to do with a mortgage, whether it's refinance, get a new one, sell, buy, whatever, you could do it all with Cross Country Mortgage. Visit ccm.com/barstool now, and you can get up with one of their experts soon, I would imagine the next day or two. Cross Country Mortgage LLC, NMLS 3029. All loans are subject to underwriting approval. And www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. Let's do some save rounds and alibis. Nick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, my save round is the only thing I can think about with having that many kids. The only people that I could see be like, this is a great idea, and in the US is Netflix and YouTube, because that is on, and it's not even because I don't care one way or another. YouTube has taught my daughter a lot, through instructional stuff, but just I have Gabby's Dollhouse playing right now. We're in that Gabby Dollhouse phase, and I'm just if there are views attached to this, or if you are a YouTube creator and you just hammer that kid thing, you could have 2 billion views. And if you have 13 kids, I mean, that household is a gold mine.
Well, Blippi was a content failure before he switched to the kids.
He was doing poop stuff. He was doing poop and butt.
Oh, yeah, he was doing poopy stuff.
Big
People don't realize.
Weirdo. Yeah, we
he did a Harlem Shake where he diarrheaed on his friend.
Oh man, we phased the Blipster out. He's dead. He's dead to us.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Can't deal with it.
Cons, what about you,
play
pal?
that mouse either.
So last night I was very fortunate. I got to go for the second year in a row to the opening ceremony and dinner for the Simpson Cup, which is presented by the On Course Foundation, which is geared towards getting veterans into the game of golf and then ultimately getting them jobs in the game of golf. And I was very fortunate. Sitting at my table was General George Casey, who, as we know, was the former chief of staff of the Army, very distinguished career in the Army. And one of the guys that my buddy also invited was his friend from college who was ROTC and went into the Marines. And it was interesting to me because I know who George Casey was and is because I was in the Army. But when you're in another branch, you might not know who some folks are. So we're sitting there at the table, we're all just making small talk, whatever. So he says, So George, did you serve in the military? Casey's like, yep, Army, 41 years, just very matter of factly, like clearly the kid had no idea
You
who
don't.
he was.
It's
I mean,
like
other
me when
branches
an
of
athlete.
service, you don't know.
When
Like,
athletes come
Yeah.
to the office, I work at a sports company. Couldn't tell you. Couldn't
Yeah.
tell. I once like shushed a bunch of Boston Red Sox to the side to get to cupcakes that were on the bar at the old office after they had just won the World Series, and they're like, "Kate," and I was like, "I have no. These could be guys from off the street. I have no clue."
Yeah.
That's all.
I mean, but you're absolutely cons. When I was a lance corporal or fuck, even a staff sergeant, I would absolutely every Marine knows who the commandant is and who the sergeant major of the Marine Corps is. Everybody. But if you ask us who another branch of service, like senior enlisted or even their commanding general, everybody be like, I don't know, and I don't give a fuck. Like, who cares?
Yeah, it was just so it was funny. It was like,
And that has to be you. Like, you wouldn't know who the commandant was when you were on active duty. Like, why would you?
Nope. No
Doesn't
shot.
affect you at all.
No shot. Not at all. Not at all.
Yep.
And yeah, his picture's not hanging anywhere in any of our buildings.
Right.
You know, they do the headshots with the chain of command. That guy's not showing up. So anyway,
Did you tell him
that
what
was
we
it.
said as a ZBT squad?
Yes, I did. He laughed.
Okay. We told him, sup,
Yes.
bitch. All right, Kate, what about you for save rounds?
Friendly reminder, Barstool's getting into the reality show game, and Barstool Survivor is the latest. The first episode just came out last night. My son, when I brought my baby in, when we were interviewing Zach and oh my God, my brain, sorry, it's complete jelly this week.
Tom.
Fucking Tom Schumann, Major Tom Schumann. He was used as a pawn when the babysitter had him. Steve and Shay, all the women who were participating in Survivor were surrounding my son because he's adorable and perfect. And Steve and Shay used that chance to pull one of them away, convince them of something, and then get them voted off. So very sneaky stuff going on with Barstool Survivor. Highly recommend checking it out. Trying to think what else. What have I been doing? What have I been up to? I don't know. Just momming around town. My son's off daycare this week because they do training for I guess for the new school year that's starting, and he's moving up to the next class. So what time is it? We started the show at 11:30. I had already been out hiking with him in the backpack. We've already been to 2 parks this morning and all kinds of stuff. So just trying to keep him busy. I don't know how stay-at-home parents, like, I think that is truly one of the people roll, oh, it's the hardest job, whatever. It is truly the hardest fucking job. Like, just constant activities. Got to keep them doing something constantly. And it's really hard. So anyway.
Are you happy
Presumably
that
also-
summer's over? Are you happy that summer's over or sad? Because now we're approaching fall and then ultimately winter where being outside gets harder and harder due to the weather.
Well, now with him, I look forward to when weather is like, because when it's over 85 and super sunny, it's like tough to take him out anywhere. So I'm actually looking forward to the fall weather this year. So it's easier to take him out and about. But I've been loving this. I've been keeping him up late so we can go to the park later and whatever when the weather's cool. I don't know. I dig it. But cool story by me.
Cool
Scrambled
story,
brain.
Kate. We'll be back here on Friday for more cool stories. We'll see you then. It's on the retreat.